Hello and welcome to Defense Line, our weekly show on defense, security and more. The massive devastation and loss to life and property in Uttarakhand has again required the Army and Air Force to step in and evacuate the stranded persons. This once again reflects a failure of our disaster management measures. What is required to be done to deal with the fury of Mother Nature and the follies of our own making? This is what we discuss in Defense Line today with Major General Virendra Kumar, former GOC of a division with experience of flood relief measures, Major General K.A.S. Bhullar, who retired as Chief of Staff of Uttar Bharat area, the very area now affected with landslides, and Major General Rajendra Nath, former GOC, Punjab, Haryana and Himachal Pradesh area. Gentlemen, welcome to the discussion. But before that, let us look at what the situation in Uttarakhand is.
Flash floods, cloudbursts and subsequent landslides in Uttarakhand have claimed hundreds of lives and left thousands of pilgrims for Himalayan shrines stranded. Air Force helicopters and the Army have been pressed into rescue operations in the flood-hit state. About 8,500 Army Jawans are working continuously to locate the people stranded in most difficult of places and shift them to safer areas. People are being rescued by erecting smaller bridges and through other means in the most challenging of situations. This is not for the first time where the Army help is sought to carry out civilian roles. Army is brought out of the barracks when Kashmir simmers. It is called whenever there is internal disturbance. A kid falls into a pit, the Army is there again. The Army is well equipped to deal with such situations and the help sought. But this Army assistance is proving detrimental for the civilian administration. Instead of strengthening its own disaster management system, the civil administration is becoming more and more dependent on the Army. Though Army might be lending a helping hand, but it is certainly not meant to carry out civilian roles.
We are in conversation with three retired distinguished soldiers with tremendous experience of Army aid to civil authorities. General Bhullar, I'll start with you. Since you are familiar with Uttarakhand, why do you think the devastation befell this area in particular? After all, there were rains all over the country.
You know, the hills in Uttarakhand are very, very peculiar. Firstly, this area falls in a seismic zone, which is very, very vulnerable to earthquakes and tremors and natural calamities of this nature. The second part is that the hill formation is not fully formed as yet.
Okay.
And they are fragile hills. And even minor weather occurrences and other things has a very devastating effect. In fact, even on a normal, even during the normal season, if you are going to Rishikesh, you can never be very sure if you are going by road that you are going to reach or you are going to come back, because there are landslides and landslips which are taking place regularly. The third basic problem that is there is that there are all lateral arteries. The interconnectivity is there, but it is not very good. So, all the traffic is going on a single road axis and coming back on the same road axis. This increases the load on a road, and therefore, even small calamities get exaggerated or they get magnified because of the amount of volume of traffic that is there and amount of the population that is there, and management and handling therefore becomes very difficult.
So, when we were there, did it ever occur to you that this area is very vulnerable and we need to take some preventive steps?
Well, I don't know how much you are familiar with, but the Army is on and off doing these operations all through the year. I mean, even last year, even just before I retired, we have had problems in Kedarnath, we had some casualties. This is an ongoing process that has never occurred, it has never happened that it has never occurred. Only the magnitude of the problem, of course, has been very severe this time as compared to the other times. But this is a phenomena which is, I won't say predictable, it is obvious, it has always happened.
This magnitude of the tragedy could have been averted if the inflow of people into that area had been kind of regulated. Is that possible?
You see, if the number of people would have been less, or if the number of people would have been controlled, obviously the extent of damage or extent of, the tragedy would have been controlled. And this area is also, actually what happens is during this season, it's the summer season.
Right.
It's also the pilgrimage season. And this area swells up with such a lot of population, so much of population, that it is actually bursting from its seams. And population control becomes a very, very major problem over there.
General Nath, I think you also want to say something.
When I was Commandant IMA,
right,
I have gone into the area.
Okay.
Actually, we people are very fond of religion. Kedarnath area had bugger all buildings around it.
Okay.
Later on, a huge number of buildings have come up. Secondly, I noticed from the TV that large number of these buildings are on the bank of the river itself.
So you agree that some of it could be a natural calamity, but a lot of it is actually man-made. The whole disaster
I
is
personally
man-made.
think a lot of it is land-made. It is certainly much more water has come.
Right.
There is no doubt about it. But if the construction is done on exactly close to the river bank, then most of it is in the danger of being
Right.
inundated.
Vindya Kumar, you wanted to say something?
I would just draw a parallel with Amarnath Yatra.
Okay.
Now, just because there is a security threat there, because of that, we have a unified headquarter in place for normal routine operations in the valley. The same UHQ takes stock of the Amarnath Yatra. At least
But
six.
Jalal Kumar, that's because there is a threat
Yes.
to the yatra. Now, I don't think there is a threat of that kind here.
No, but similar type and the arrangements which go into the minutest of details, because there is a rep of the armed forces attending that UHQ meet and it is discussed at the level of the governor. That is the place where this yatra entire thing gets discussed and the arrangements are made accordingly. Your medical help, your contingency plans, your yes, I agree. The number of troops employed there are much more because of the security threat being there.
Right.
But at least the paramilitary forces, the police forces, they all are in a coordinated manner organized to carry out, conduct that complete yatra. And that's how it goes on peacefully year after year. Of course, we had some tragedies there also a few years back. But here I find, having been to this area a number of times, it is a free for all. It is, I think, one axis, as General Bhuller has brought out, which bears the entire brunt of the entire
That's
yatra.
interesting. It is, you said it's a free for all. Now, you had experience in Rajasthan. There were floods in Kota when you were posted there. You have experience of Punjab, I think 2006 when you were in Punjab.
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
Now, if there were timely alerts and certain precautions had been taken, I think the magnitude of the tragedy could have been averted in almost all these places where you had to deal with floods, no?
Absolutely right. You see, if we see the stages of disaster management, the first stage is mitigation and preparedness. To that extent, having served in command headquarters at Chandi Mandir, as also having commanded the division in Punjab, I must appreciate that flood being one of the major problems where a calamity can arise in Punjab in view of number of rivers flowing through it, as also the number of canal systems that we have. The government makes it sure at the onset of the monsoon season that there is a joint control room established. There are joint parties established at all the dams, headworks, where there is proper monitoring done of the water levels. The army keeps getting the feedback. Of course, the terrain, there is a lot of difference in what is in Punjab and also I must say there, as also the cooperation of the public. In every calamity that has happened, if a river band has broken or a canal band has broken, it is army has only provided the leadership and some amount of help, whereas the bulk of the help has come from the locals
But
themselves.
General Kumar, what about the civilian administration? Are they really geared up for these kind of exigencies?
Yes, absolutely. In Punjab, at least I have seen all departments work in absolute sync. That is maybe the canal department, the irrigation department, they all work in sync. And they have advanced preparations made for such type of contingencies, which because it's an every year recurring problem. Some or the other band has to break somewhere or the other. And I think the basic reason is, being an agrarian society, every individual is concerned about his land holding, his piece of land. And that is where I think that spark comes in each one, that to save his land, I think they take proper precautions at the right time.
Right.
You know, we must draw
Yes,
one
General
parallel.
Yeah.
If you see the Hajj Yatra, for instance, the largest congregation of manpower at any single place in the world is in
That's
Makkah
right.
during that point of time. And you see what is the kind of measures that go firstly into preparation of pilgrims going there. Secondly, you must see what is the access control measures which are put into place. And countries like ours who are sending a large population, how is the traffic regulated and that, you know, controlled numbers go into Hajj. Uttarakhand has got far too many religious places. It's the Devbhumi as they call it, and all the.
I think this would be true of almost all hill states.
Yeah, but Uttarakhand in particular, because the number of religious places in Uttarakhand, the number of tourist places in Uttarakhand, the number of adventure activity places, mountain peaks which have to be scaled, is the largest in any state in India.
That's an interesting point. I think we need to draw a lesson from the Hajj.
Yeah,
Yatra.
and But at the moment in Uttarakhand, there is no such machinery which is in place.
That's right. Jalnath, when you were the GOC of Punjab, Haryana and Himachal Pradesh area, how often were there demands for aid to civil authority?
There was hardly any demand for aid to civil authority.
Okay.
Of the damage, like the natural damage and all that. I do recall, though, Indira Gandhi once decided to come.
Okay.
She was to come to inaugurate the canal.
SYL canal, I believe. Yes.
Yeah. Now, suddenly, in the evening, I was told that tomorrow or day after, Prime Minister is going to come and further details will be told to you later on. They decided early in the morning, next day, that day after she will come there and you have to make arrangement. Firstly, the helicopter should land there so that, and the ground has to be very carefully seen that there are no mines or bomb planted there. And secondly, there is outside danger that there might be very serious agitation which may become outside the control of the
civilian
administration. Well, I personally thought the notice was far too small, but normal precautions were taken. When Prime Minister came, I also received her along with the Chief Minister Haryana, and when she was going, so I said, Madam Prime Minister, I wish you all the very best on your trip. She was taking a step up, she looked back and said, General, I needed to.
Okay.
So she was in picture and then she went there. Of course, nothing happened.
But is the system of army aid to civil authorities quite streamlined, or you think something needs to be done?
I personally thought it was not at all streamlined.
Okay.
Haryana government I was dealing with in this case here. And I personally thought that the bureaucrats like to lay down the law, exactly how it should be done. They don't go on the ground and see it. If you see what the malaise has occurred in that area that General Buller is so much described in detail, it's a simple thing. I have been seeing it, that the traffic has been increasing for years. I have gone there more than once.
Right.
And no action has been taken whatsoever to widen the route. If we had only widened the route to 1.5 times, even if the erosion does take place, there would have been less.
I think a couple of things could have been done. Timely alerts, if regulation of the traffic.
Infrastructure has been neglected totally.
General Bhuller, the Central Army Commander General Anil Chet, he is very hopeful. He said the army is not God, but yet they will try and evacuate everybody, and no more lives will be lost. But what do you think? How difficult a task is it to evacuate almost about 30 to 40,000 people who are stranded there?
Firstly, the army is a deployment there during this time of the year, and this is a season which is campaigning season, as they call it, and therefore the army is spread out and deployed, and it has an operational task.
So they are out exercising there?
Not exercising; they are actually doing up their defenses. They are opening up the thing, and they have an operational task at hand.
Okay.
Also, all the stockings which have to take place. We have something called an advanced monsoon stocking, because in this area the roads get disrupted. So we are stocking not only for the winters, we also stock for the winters, for the monsoons, and so is the ITBP does the same. Okay. Also, this is the time when patrolling to the passes and all has to take place, and as you are aware, the threat against China is becoming more visible as time goes by. So our activity along the border is also increased, and transgressions and other things do keep taking place, of which all of you are aware, and therefore the army at this time is also hands full. And however, there is adequate army resources available with central command, and I am sure when the nation needs them, the armed forces will come back and do their utmost. The problem in this area is that while it's easy to say all this, evacuation is a little difficult. It is difficult because the number of places where you could land your helicopters is limited. The number of places where you can land your fixed wing aircraft is very, very limited. In fact, the 2 ALGs are only at a place called Gochar, which is near Rudraprayag, and at Dharasu, which is near Harsil.
I believe they have been operationalized.
They have now been operationalized. And there is the third ALG is only in Pithodagarh, which is on a totally different axis from the center of the disaster at the moment. And so it's going to be a very time consuming effort. And second thing, like what I told you, the only axes, a couple of axes or road axes which are existing have been disrupted. So alternate routes are going to be footbound, they are going to be difficult. And the worst thing which hampers the operation this is areas, of course, weather. And it can be a very nice sunny day, and in high altitude weather changes by the hour. So many a times you will find your rescue efforts will also get hampered or because of the weather. So it's an unpredictable thing. You can't lay down a timeline to say that I'll do it by so and so time. But however, the army, I'm sure, is going to put in its best efforts and try and help out the.
And I think already there is an alert of more rain coming in.
There is. Yes.
I'll just like to add here.
Yes.
Now, at this stage, helicopter is the primary means for rescuing most of these people out or bringing them out of these areas. In these hills and valleys, what has happened lately is that because of these hydroelectric projects coming up in these areas, the number of high tension wires which have been laid across the valleys is so tremendous. This Kinnaur Valley, I can confess that the pilots are scared to fly in these valleys because in spite of repeated assurances by the state government, these transmission lines do not have those early warning, those balloons type which they are supposed to hang, which the pilots can observe while flying. And this is the biggest hazard which I think even in Uttarakhand with the number of hydroelectric projects which have come up, I'm sure these
No, that's my next question. Now, you see the Vinod Duggal, who is the former Home Secretary, he's been made the nodal officer for coordination between the various agencies. Do you think somebody from the army should have been made the nodal officer, especially with so many choppers from the Air Force, so many army units being involved, and it's primarily now an army operation, no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There was a requirement of a nodal agency being appointed.
Okay.
If we see, I think it has become beyond the services role also, this entire magnitude of this calamity which has taken place, and synergizing all the resources. Yes, Army, Air Force may be playing the predominant role for some time, but ultimately the recovery, the rehabilitation, the entire process, if it has to be rolled in and come into place, it will be a much longer and a drawn out process. So a central nodal agency in terms of an MHA official, I think is very
fine.
I have a slight difference with him.
Okay.
I think he is thinking in a long time process.
Right.
6 months, 1 year, because rehabilitation will take, to my mind, year to 5 years. The amount of houses that have gone down, it's a very long process. But I have seen invariably, whenever there is a tragedy, where there is a difficult situation, the civilian staff, the DC and all that seldom come into the picture till it is reasonably too late.
So it's now it's basically the army which is calling the shots there.
Right. As of now, we are doing the thing. I think there is a definite requirement for an army person to be in charge. However, there will be problems from the bureaucrats not to appoint one. But if politicians see through the game, they have a military officer at the head of it, I am sure about it. The evacuation would be faster, better organized, and will take place.
General Buller, what is your take on this, since you served in that area?
I will tell you, and I am quite familiar with all this. I have also commanded a counterinsurgency force headquarters, and I have had similar situations while commanding that. You see, whenever a disaster of this magnitude takes place, there has to be a single point control. There has to be a unified command structure. You can't have people going in different directions.
So who should be the nodal officer now?
At the moment, I'll just come to that. You see, what happens is there are so many resources deployed, and if all the resources start operating independently, there will be no synergy and there will be no command and control, and we won't get the results that we are looking at. For the time being, the bulk of the deployment and the bulk of the resources are from the armed forces, and I think it is only common sense that for the purposes of evacuation, for the purposes of immediate evacuation and immediate this thing, it is the control must fall on the senior-most army chap who's over there from the armed forces. And of course, there is a representation from the Air Force also, and obviously they can also fall under command that.
Right.
After the immediate evacuation has taken place, and now reconstruction and other things that would take place, obviously the command will go away. But the present system is not a very good system. There is an army commander who's sitting in Joshimath.
That's right. Very, very valid point.
Yeah.
Now, General Kumar, as we said, now the army has come in now. The primary agency responsible for national disaster, there is a National Disaster Relief Force, the NDRF. Now, that is under the Home Ministry. Is there a case to put the NDRF under the MOD?
Well, there is no such case, and I don't see any reason why this NDRF should be put under the army. For the simple reason, the civil administration is geared to take care of certain type of calamities, certain type of, up to a certain level.
But that isn't happening really, no? I mean, finally
No,
it is the army which is called out.
So that is one of the sad states existing, or it is snowballing into this event after event, I must say.
Right.
But we need to fix this problem. We need to give strength to this NDRF and also make it a sustainable force. I have a feeling probably maybe financial crunch is one thing which may be putting or hold back on this, considering the magnitude of the country, to make NDRF totally equipped, mobile, to be able to undertake this type of operation.
Right.
So manpower comes from the army, the equipment comes from the army, but the NDRF still continues to have its own mantle. But this force should continue to remain under MHA, since it's a civil administration's function.
Yeah,
to restore
I get your
normalcy.
point. Jalnath, the only thing is that in case NDRF is under the MOD, even the lateral induction from the defense services into the NDRF or into similar forces could be easier. You know, I remember there were some eco battalions were raised a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So similarly, you could actually have separate battalions, dedicated battalions under the NDRF, no?
Actually, the eco battalions have done wonderful job.
Okay.
From Dehradun to Mussoorie, the entire area was cut off of jungles, and the one battalion was put on it, later on second battalion, and for miles around both sides of the road they planted trees. It was the best way of doing things they taught it. When you talk in terms of the civilian doing it, let me see how where the disaster management as a subject is taught. I found the Punjab University Defense Department teaches disaster management. It is not a part of political science.
On ground, actually, nothing is happening.
Nothing is on the ground. The DC, they had a disaster management scheme in Chandigarh a few months ago.
In
They
fact,
tried
there was a drill even a few weeks ago. That was only kind of a formality, really.
But nothing really worked. They later on found they have no clue. So it will take quite some time for them to understand the implication, how to organize it, how to get. Our problem is organization, if I may say so. And in civil, the organization leaves much to be desired. Even for the games, first time the games took place, Vice Chief of the Army Staff was put in charge. General Krishna Rao was the chief.
That's right. Yeah, since we're running out of time, General Bhullar, the last word from you.
No, but I just want to make one point before that.
Okay.
You know, it's not the Army's primary role to carry out disaster management. It's the responsibility of the state administration.
But how can we strengthen the
No,
disaster management machinery?
I'm just coming to that.
Right.
Now, there are 2 points that I want to make. First is, should the disaster management infrastructure and its resources come under the MOD or not? My personal opinion is no, because then it falls, the responsibility is taken away from the people who are to actually execute it. Now, for all natural calamities and untoward incidents, the resources, money, everything is to be paid by the state stroke the central government.
Right.
And there are book transactions which are taking place. So, it must continue there. However, when the army is called for such tasks, which should be as a last resort, then all these resources should automatically come under command the MOD and the army and whatever channel that you look, but not during peacetime. Now, second part is the lateral induction. You know, people from the army have a lot of experience. They are always operating in adverse conditions in high altitude areas. They are very, very familiar with natural calamities, avalanches, and slips and things like that. Those people can always be inducted. You made a mention of the eco battalions. What are the eco battalions? They are funded by the state. They are people of the state, and only the manpower is coming from there. The same thing can be done in the disaster management force. The lateral induction can take place from the army and the other armed forces, and it remains under the Home Ministry. And when the army is called for, and
but I think a lot needs to be done at the level of the states, because I think that's where these problems really come up.
I am sorry to disagree, because under the Home Ministry is also all the forces that are operating to control Maos and whatsoever. And you know what is the result at the result.
Yeah, but we all disagree to agree that something definitely needs to be done.
It need to be done, and it is time that we took effective by trust the military to do something useful, and they will do it.
Right, Jalnath, since you run out of time, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us in the discussion. Once again, the Army and the Air Force help had to be requisitioned to evacuate the stranded persons in Uttarakhand. These services will surely rise to the occasion, but in the wake of this tragedy, there is need to rework our national disaster management systems. That is all in Defense Line today. Do write your feedback. Good luck and goodbye.
खबरों की दुनिया में आइए, हमारे साथ कहीं भी और कभी भी जुड़िए। हम मिलेंगे फेसबुक पर, हम दिखेंगे यूट्यूब पर, हमें फॉलो कीजिए ट्विटर पर। खबरों के साथ बने रहिए रात दिन।